just officially introduce Marek to you. So, Marek Rosa is CEO and founder of Keen Software House and also director behind Space Engineer series.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
No, please. To start with the interview, I wanted to know what does space engineers mean to you?
Well, it's my life's work. I would say the most successful thing I created. So that means a lot, and it's also for me a way how I can build something bigger than myself. That's basically how I see space engineer. So you know, it's and also it's like my child in a sense. So for example, I cannot even imagine quitting in software house or exiting or like selling the company or something like that. That would be like selling your child to slavery.
Yes.
So yeah, so it means a lot to me.
And how did it all start? Because I know that you were previously working for with medieval engineers, but the one that really kicked and it's like you said, your baby, it's space engineers. It has an amazing work behind it.
Yeah. So how it started? Well, before I started in software house, I was programming, working on my own engine and some, let's say, like samples or some examples or some ideas that I had that I wanted to program. And but I always wanted to make my own game uh, as again as some kind of like creative manifest, like to build something bigger, and also for practical reasons because I was thinking that if I enjoy doing it, I should probably earn money doing it. It just makes sense. And making games seemed like like a good idea to me. So this was before King Software House, and then I started King Software House. I was already working in my spare time on Minor Wars, and after we released Minor Wars, then I was thinking like, what's next? What should be the next project? And then it all came together in some way that the older ideas that I had before, which was to create a game that is like a Lego technique, where you put together some blocks or some prefab, some modules, and physics simulates them. So you can have like very complicated physical contraptions, uh, rotors, pistons, those kind of things. So I was thinking about this like many years, even before Minor Wars. And when we started to work on Space Engineers, or basically the next game after Minor Wars, then I kind of like looked back, like all these ideas, and maybe I was thinking that maybe now it's time to actually go to this ambition, and like really go far. And I wasn't sure it will work out because I wasn't sure the physics will be robust enough, precise, and also fast enough, because like simulating physical collisions and interactions between all these blocks and everything, it didn't seem so plausible like it's today. And but we started to work on this. We did few quick prototypes. Some of them are actually quite weird. Like for example, using the voxels that we use for asteroids and terrain, using the voxels to build the spaceships. So imagine a spaceship made from kind of terrain voxels. So that was really weird and ugly. But then I somehow like started to think like, if we want to do this Lego in space properly, we really should not do it with some stupid compromises or some like simplification, and we really need to think about like what's the core to the experience, and it is like a block building, so like building on a grid, like things that can snap to each other, so you can also understand how they relate to each other, and maybe it can also help with the performance and everything. So when I started to think about this, uh, it like clicked together. Then we made some prototypes, they worked. Then we decided we need to do the deformations and distractions because without them it would be also quite strange. So we did that. Luckily, again, we were just because we're a small team, so we didn't have much time to prepare. We come up with some very simple solutions that actually work until today, and they worked. The performance was also good. And then a few months after that, we released the game on early access. People really liked the game, and in that moment, we knew, that we have basically we have found the gold. So, we just need to work on this.
And
Yeah.
why space? Again, we talked about the space. Sorry, the mind wars, and also medieval engineer that you had, but sticking with space and how you developed afterwards on again a great success. It's an awesome game. It was like almost 10 years, right, in early access before launching the game properly. And
About 6 years. So it was in early access from 2013 until 2019. So that's six.
oh,
And
okay,
now it's five since leaving the early access. And probably you know that we just announced Space Engineers 2. You
yes.
probably noticed. So yeah, that's my my new baby. And but you ask why space? Because I was a space fan from forever, basically, and not just space and sci-fi. I also like was reading other books, but space was probably my dominant kind of genre in books. And then there was also practical reason, which was that when we are thinking what kind of blocks you will need to put together to create some interesting physical creations and puzzles and contraptions and so on, having the space as a law seemed like the most kind of logical way, because if you are doing this in the past, let's say medieval engineers, you would limit the choices to just the blocks that would be possible in medieval times. If you would move it to the modern time, like today, again, you would limit yourself, and you would not be able to have like a gravity generator. You would not have to have like, some thrusters, and all these sci-fi things. And another practical reason, because many of these things actually were kind of practical decisions made because of the constraints that we had. We were just a small team and experimenting. We didn't know if it will work out and so on. So many of these decisions were not really like, this is our vision or like this is what we want. It was more like, what's the most pragmatic way how to approach this? So one of the reasons for space was also that we didn't have planets. At the time, we were probably not even planning to have planets, but we have the voxel technology and the asteroids from minor wars. So we thought that in space, you don't need planets, you don't need flora, fauna, you don't need like many other things. You just focus on the asteroids, and that will work out. So there were these practical reasons, but lastly, it was the love for sci-fi.
Yes, and actually, one of the mission points of King Software House it's design promotion. Uh, how this relates with the original idea, and like you're saying, your love for space. I'm totally the same to be honest, but it's something that was developed throughout the development of the game, or you already knew that okay, want you said I want to build a game. It's going to be space because of this constraint, and we want to promote science. How was it?
Well, I mean, I'm still not completely clear about what I meant by promoting the science. It's more like a feeling in a sense, that it's a space engineering game about building in space, mostly by solving logical or physical puzzles and problems, not by shooting, and destroying stuff, but more like how I can build this thing. The same like with Lego Technique, that when you're also building with Lego Technique, you also learn a lot about like mechanical engineering and physics and how things work. So that was the thinking, that if people will spend time solving these physical puzzles and problems, they will learn something more than if you're just shooting people in Call of Duty. So that was basically it. And like we are lucky that it worked in a sense that there is enough people interested in this, that it's not such a niche. I mean, it's still niche, but quite a big niche. And uh, so this is how I think we are promoting the science. And practically speaking, over the last 11 years, we had actually many people who sent us email and they were thanking us for inspiring their career. So, there are many players who started to play space engineers. Then they decided that they want to become programmer or a physicist. Or actually, there was one person from Australia who even started to study space engineering on a
Wow.
university. And he finished the school, he got a degree. So now he's, like a real space
That's
engineer. And And he was saying that it was thanks to our game that basically kind of kicked him. And since we sold more than 5 million copies, I don't know how much it is now, maybe even 6. Uh, it's a lot of people actually. Like it's a big city, right? Or even big country. Like I'm from Slovakia, and we have 5 million people in the whole country. So you can think about like the whole country, plays space engineers. So some people uh, will definitely be inspired by the game enough to change their career or life.
Sometimes that it's great, and this is going to be maybe a personal story, but something that it's great regarding space engineers is that it does not matter um, how much do you know. You can start doing things. You can have a factory and make some things automatic. You can have an airlock, and you can have with the conveyors, you can have be sorting materials. And even though I had little background programming, just an introduction. Uh, I did not have to program one line of code. You can do it with what the game already offers, and that is great. And even though we are going to be speaking about space engineers too in a little bit, wanted to ask how this will be deepened with space engineers too. Because I guess that everything that we have on space engineers, we will have it, but how it will be deepened.
So in some sense, the core experience will stay the same. So it's still about building from blocks, experiencing the physical interaction. And this is very important for me, is this physical interaction and the feeling that you are interacting with the world, almost like sensing the world. I don't want the game to become like too abstract or to be like, almost like some strategy game where you are managing some units, but you are, some guy in the sky and you are not really touching the environment. I really want it that you can touch the environment and feel. So that's, for example, why in Space Engineers 2, we are spending so much time on animations and even little things like when you jump or when you, let's say, fall and you land, it makes a noise, like boom. And now actually I created a few days ago, created a ticket, and I want to add some kind of like a smoke, like a dust, coming from your feet when you land on this like high velocity, instead of just like jumping or walking, because there is some kind of like a footstep particle effect with smokes when you're walking, like very minor. But I think when you just like jump and fall and hit the ground, I think it should be bigger. And again, I think these things where you feel like you're interacting with the environment and the environment is interacting or reacting to you, that's very important for me because it just feels so satisfying. So Space Engineering should be about this feeling. For me, it should not be just abstract fun. And where Space Engineers 2 will become better than Space Engineers 1, is like many things. For example, in the first release, we'll be introducing 25 centimeter unified grid system. So
Yes.
instead of having the 2.5 meter blocks or 50 centimeter blocks or grids, you will have just one unified, and the resolution will be 25 centimeter. So you will be able to build like much higher resolution. And also this means that the smallest possible armor or block is just 25 centimeters. So you can really do a lot of detailing work. But if you want to build with big blocks, you can still build with 2.5 meter blocks. So I think this is big one because it will add a lot of flexibility to players and open new things that previously would not be possible. So this is one. Then uh, other things where we are improving would be, for example, the graphics. That Space Engineers 2 just looks, I think, like 10 times better than Space Engineers 1.
Wow.
And because of the ray tracing and also like spending more time on art and also kind of not doing some compromises and really staying true to the vision, to the especially the aesthetics vision that I have for Space Engineers 2. So the visuals and the visuals, they matter, because that just like creates the first impression and also the feeling. And I think that sometimes when some things are really pretty, just like the visuals can create this good feeling, that when you see, let's say, nice picture in a movie or in a museum or in a gallery, it can make you feel good. Like, yes, this is so beautiful. This is so pretty. and or let's say you are in nature and you see some nice place in the nature, and it also
Yeah.
makes you feel like, yes, this is just beautiful. And I want that in space engineers too, that like almost everywhere you look, I would like players to feel like this is amazing, like these shadows, this lighting, this reflection here. And most of the time it works for me like that, when I'm playtesting the game and I'm just running somewhere,
Mm.
I'm just feeling very good just from observing the game. Then the other improvements that will help with the creativity, yeah, is the user experience and user interface. So basically, we are trying to make everything more intuitive and accessible and easier to use. Not really simplifying it in a sense that like dumping it down. Like we don't really want to do that. Uh, it's more like removing the obstacles that player can have, because he doesn't understand something or something's like too many steps, uh, in order to do something or to learn something. So we want to remove these friction points as much as we can so that it feels like you still have some challenge in the game, that challenge in a sense like what you want to build, but there are no obstacles in your way and you can like very intuitively do them. This is super important for me. Actually, it's the priority number one, like to really push on the intuitiveness. Yeah, and then there are many other things that we'll be adding, like NPCs, human NPCs, campaign, story campaign. Then we have finally a lore for the game. So there is like lore about the solar system, Almagest, the main characters, some factions, how they get there. Then there are some mysteries and so on. So that is actually a big part that I spent quite a lot of time working on it with the team. And I'm just trying to remember what else I think is the big improvement. I think the main is that, or the main rule was, let's look on SE1, learn or try to understand what was the core experience, and now how we can make it 10 times better in all those dimensions.
Wow, it's a lot. And again, Space Engineers 1, it was already amazing. I think it's great knowing that we will have now human NPCs. I think that that was the only part that was like kind of missing. Even though it was great to be working with another humans, so it was like I want it. I don't know if we need it, but it would be nice to have it. You said before that everything was about the interactions. For what you said, it was about like those really small things to really big things because of these footprint physics, and again to the physics and how the whole universe in this case works. So, what can we expect regarding rotors and how things worked? I know that we loved to challenge space engineers and the wrath of Lord Clang, so it's going to be more stable in a way when trying to be like more easy, like you said, or we can expect the same kind of frictions when we are working with physics, especially with rotors. I think that the most challenging part is that.
Yeah, I cannot promise, but because we have the new Havoc physics, which also is, I think, almost 10 years older than the one that we have in Space Engineers 1. It means that it should be more stable, and we also tested it heavily. Uh, so it should be more stable, more robust, more precise. So I think there will be improvements in the physical simulation, like rotors and pistons and those kind of things. So I think that will be an improvement, and uh, then we also try to improve some little things for user experience regarding the rotors, but we're actually already doing it in Space Engineers 1 recently. Actually, not sure if you released it or if you're planning to release it, but I think, no, I think we released it. There is like a new controls for kind of like limits for
Yes.
the rotors and how you can kind of like move them. So those little things that some people call quality of life, or you can call them some like intuitiveness or simplicity, flexibility, accessibility. So those we will probably be also implementing to Space Engineers too. Yeah, but in general, and short answer is that I think thanks to the new Havoc physics, the physics will be more precise and stable.
Okay, you said before that the game will have ray tracing. We are looking to something that is going to be more CPU or GPU demanding. I remember that at first it was really demanding on the CPU, and then move towards a little bit to the usage of the graphic cards. So in Space Engineers 2, will we have something like in the middle, or we will need a potent graphic card to manage everything and the ray tracing? I don't know if that
Yeah,
makes sense.
yeah, I think ray tracing is like GPU bound or GPU heavy.
Yeah.
So I don't think, well, I would have to ask the render programmers, but I don't think anything significant regarding ray tracing is happening on the CPU. Because we also have this GPU-driven rendering pipeline. So we try to leave as much rendering as possible on the GPU as we can, and not really like transfer it to CPU and collaborate with CPU. It actually means that because in the past when I was programming, usually what you were doing is that your CPU sent the commands to GPU, like render this triangle with these coordinates, with this texture, and blah blah blah. And or you were doing things like, for example, is this triangle or is this mesh even in the view frustum, or is it outside? So you don't see it. So you did these little tests, and if the response was no, then you didn't render that mesh, because it was outside of the frustum. It was called frustum cooling. And now what we do is that the GPU is doing the frustum cooling. So we just send all the data, the scene, to the GPU, and we update it, every frame, like rotations, translations, and so on. And then the GPU itself is doing this frustum cooling, for example, and deciding whether to render that mesh or not render the mesh.
Okay.
So many of the things don't even get back to CPU. And I would expect that this would be also true for the ray tracing part, that it will be just happening on the GPU. So I recommend people to have better GPUs to experience Space Engineers too. It's almost like, I mean, I cannot buy for them the GPU, but it's like if you really want to experience the game, like you have to have good GPU. Like
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. So, when you started the Space Engineers Early Access, you told me it was 11 years now, no? Okay. Did
Yes.
you think that so many people was going to be into it, or and that you would even need a sequel later on?
It's a good question. Probably no. I mean, you always hope, when you're making a game that many people will want it, but you never know for sure. And but I was quite confident that the idea is good. But again, you never know. Maybe you have a good idea and somehow you're bad at selling it to people and they will never be interested in it and so on. But what I knew was that when we first announced the game, when we showed it on Twitter, just some first teasers where we showed crashing ships, and people started to go completely crazy. Like I could see like messages, like hundreds of messages every day sending me that they want the game, like I'm throwing money at the screen and nothing is happening, the usual kind of gamer rage. Uh, I knew that it will be successful because it was just visible. And then when the pre-order started and we saw the sales on first on our eShop and then on Steam, that was the moment where we knew, that it will be successful because it was just you could say that you kind of hit some kind of mainstream interest and that many people are really interested in this game. And actually, I think, I hope it's not too early to say, but I think we see this also with Space Engineers too, that the interest for Space 2 is quite big. So I think we also did some good decisions, like regarding the better quality, introduction of the unified grid system, the lore, and many other things. I think that were good decisions that are compatible with what the community wants. And sometimes the community, they kind of don't know what they want, but when you give it to them, they realize like, yes, this is what I was missing in the game. This is what I wanted. Like and I think so. This is the hard part of what we are doing, is that we need to guess what people will want. But the good thing is that, in a sense, I'm still making Space Engineers to be a game for me, So,
Mhm.
and there was somebody, some artist or some person once said that when you're an artist or creator, you should be creating for audience of one, It means like for yourself. And then if other people like it, that's good, And of course, some people create for themselves and nobody else will like it, That's unfortunate. But some people have this almost like mainstream taste, and if they like it, then also many other people will like it. And so I'm using this approach, and always was when designing for Space Engineers too, that I'm basically designing it for myself and what I would like. Sometimes there are exceptions, like there are things where I don't really, I would say, even care about some little detail. And then I'm like, okay, let's do it in a way that will be most pleasurable for other people, because I don't really care about this little detail.
Yeah.
And and then I'm quite pragmatic. But when it's these little things like visuals or feeling, with the interaction in the game and so on, or let's say some new tools that we want, or even little things like, for example, now we have the paint tool in the game, and like my reason for it is that I just think it will feel so cool to be spraying your ship with a cool paint tool, that we need to have it, and we need to make sure it feels good and looks good and is easy to use and simple.
Did you feel, or do you feel, sorry, that you achieved the original vision that you had for Space Engineers?
Yeah, so that's a good question. For Space One, I would say yes, and we even like went like much further than that with many things. And because the original vision, and again, I really have to stress out here, is that vision is a funny thing, because vision is something very vague, and then when you start working on it, it starts to clarify, So like sometimes you can have vision that I just want to make a game about some space engineering and some physics and so on, but you don't even know, what that means, or like, how to put it on the paper. Like when you actually start writing the design or implementing some prototypes, then you realize that, actually, how I should do this thing or that thing, like I don't even know, because it wasn't part of your original vision. Like vision is something very small and also very personal, and it's actually really hard to transfer it to other people, to tell them that uh, just in few words, what is your vision. So again, vision is also something that develops as you are developing the game. So for me, it's hard to remember what was the original vision, but I think it really was make a game where it's like Lego technique that works with the physics and is volumetric, so things are not just some polygons and stuff, but they are volumetric, they have some volume, and you have things behind things and so on, and they have some functionality, like buttons, like a button can do something somewhere and so on. So I think this vision was achieved multiple times with Space Engineers 1, and with Space Engineers 2, what I'm trying to achieve is that I just want to do it much, much better than we did in Space 1, without some mistakes, without some, let's say, like dead ends, or like not adding features or not spending time on things that are not so important to the core experience. And also because we have 11 years of experience doing this, I think we can do it much better. And so basically what I want to do is to do it again, just much, much, much better, and to not do any compromise.
When did you feel that there was a need for Space 2?
That's a good question. uh, I, I'm trying to remember. That's a good question. Maybe after we finished the Space One in 2019, maybe after that, I started to feel like we should work on this, because I liked Space Engineers 1, but I wanted to do it again, like more closer to my vision and to my aspiration, and to avoid some compromises and so on. And so it's almost like if you create something, when it's finished, then you know how to do it better. So for example, like somebody once told me that when they built their first house, they made some mistakes, and then when they built their second house, they kind of didn't do those mistakes again, you know.
Yeah.
And now they are building the third house, and they now finally know what kind of house they want. You know, so like every time on every iteration, you learn something more and you want to do it better. So probably in 2020 or so, I started to feel like we need to start working on space two. And what had to happen before we could start working on it was to build the team. So because you cannot just, you know, like keep working on space one and with the same people keep working on space two. So we had to start building the team, and yeah, and that led to VH3 and Space Engineers 2. And the real development then started in 3 years ago from now, or before now, basically. That we like really started to work on it, that we announced it internally in our team, and you know it was official and everybody was working on it. But then it really took few months actually to kind of change everybody's mindset that don't work on space one anymore, like really work on space two. Like I want you to be working on space two. Like don't try to, you know, like solve some things in space one, just focus on space two.
I guess that players will still be able to write scripts on Space Engineers too, right? So that it's going to be one of those things that will be carried forward to the next game, or is any change on the language that you're using, adding new features? I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, so this is something that we haven't started to work on yet. So some things
Okay.
can still change. But as far or like until now, all the discussions about this that we had internally in our team is that we should probably stick to C sharp, because if players are using the same language for scripting as we are, then it's just making the whole thing, you know, somehow easier, better, and so on. And but I also think we need to analyze this a little bit more. So that let's say there is a language that is also accessible for players and easy for them. Another thing is that if you want to run it on consoles, we cannot currently run C sharp on consoles, but maybe if it is interpreted C sharp, it can be, and it can be run on consoles, because then we can make it safe, you know, that people cannot kind of like do some exploits. And so again, to summarize this, I think it's very possible it will be C sharp, but some innovations will happen, meaning kind of like keeping the scripts, the in-game scripts in check, and having some like performance and memory budgets for them, you know, and keeping them with those limits, so people cannot create scripts that will, you know, like destroy the performance on some server and so on. So I think we will invest a little bit more into making sure that the scripts are really kind of sandboxed and safe
Yeah, to
for
make them more
everybody.
safe.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, you're now working on the creative part of the game. At least it's the one that it's going to be released on. It's going to be the 25th or 27th. Sorry, I don't remember.
27.
27.
Mhm.
In January 27. For what you have been working now, what were the most challenging difficulties that you faced yourself and as a team, of course?
I think one is to build a team, because and luckily we actually managed, because I think we have a very good team now. But I think that's the biggest challenge, is to put together people, align them with the same vision, make sure that people are productive and efficient, and that we are not just, I don't know, like developing something and not actually progressing forward, but you know, like progressing and delivering finished things. So I think this was one big challenge, and we succeeded. And then there are probably many other smaller, or not smaller, but many other technical challenges, like actually even the ray tracing that's in the game was a big challenge, because it needs to work with chips that like you can behave dynamic and destructive environment, so you can change things, and everything needs to adapt to it very fastly. And the ray tracing, for example, when we are testing ray tracing or global illumination in Unreal, I think how they could like luminosity or something like that. I don't remember. So when we were testing it, it didn't really work well on fast-moving ships or fast-moving objects. Like it simply wasn't stable. Like it was like very, very messy. And we managed to do it, to do our ray tracing to be stable even at high speeds. And one of the last things actually that got fixed just maybe 4 months ago was the shadows in the ships. So the ray tracing solves many things, but it didn't solve the leaking lights. So you have a point light somewhere, and it's emitting light, but the light can be also emitting like through some obstacles. It can go through because shadowing is an independent algorithm from ray tracing. And so the ships actually didn't look so good because there was so much light leaking, like from all these point light sources that are everywhere, the spotlight, no spotlights, the interior lights, and so on. So it didn't look so good, it actually looked quite ugly. But then the programmers, they implemented what they call shadow masks. So the game internally calculates some kind of shadow masks for each light, and then this is used as a mask to masking out, the leaking light. And from that moment, it started to look beautiful. And so actually for me, that was a moment where I felt really grateful and some kind of big burden basically was removed, because I was really afraid that if we don't solve this, the game will look ugly, and then like this whole thing would be basically a waste of time. So this was like a one thing. I would not say small thing, but it is one of many that helped a lot. And what other problem was there? Or let's say a risk. Then one of those where I wasn't sure if it will work or not was the armor edges. So like you have armor, and in space one we have these little things there that cover the very very hard and very low poly edge. And in Space Engineers 2, we decided that there will be some kind of bevel, so some kind of roundness. And we implemented this as a pixel shader effect, but it was very hard. And we were really pushing it, and we were trying to make even the bevels not just on this kind of edges, but also when you have like a third face. So, when you have point, and then there is polygon on this side, and this side. And you need to make that point also kind of bevel. And we had that, but it wasn't working well in some situations. Basically, with some geometries, it wasn't working well, and we didn't know how to solve this. And that was kind of like a moment where we feel like some kind of desperation or something, like, are we really going to solve this or not? Like, if you don't solve it, it will look ugly, because there are all these situations where it's creating some like weird geometrical things. And then we realized that no, we can actually kind of revert, use the simpler version of this armor edging edge algorithm. We just like configure it really nicely, so you never see this, that at the edge it's actually still very sharp, because you will focus on the length of the edge and not on those ends. And it will feel the shape to be kind of like rounded, or like a little bit rounded. And so again, long story short, we solved that, simplified it, and even we are using a version that is like better for performance, like not eating so much GPU.
So it's going to be still those sharp edges, but it's going to be like seam rounded instead of being like all those pointed, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So basically, it's just an optical trick, but an optical trick that makes it so that the edge feels like it's a little bit rounded. And when you're close to the edge, the roundness is roughly 2.5 centimeter, the radius of this kind of like a bevel. And when you are further, it scales up with the distance. So you can still see it also from, let's say, like 200 meters. It would probably be, I don't know, like 10 centimeters or something like that. So you can still see it. and especially feel it because you see it basically through the reflections and basically just see it through lighting. And yeah, so that worked, and I'm really happy with that one because that's one of those things where you are not really sure if you will be able to do it.
Yeah, and you get it, and it's amazing. You mentioned earlier on that we would face human NPCs, but what kind of PvE encounters can we wait for the sequel?
Uh, this is something that we are still developing and still
No.
thinking about. So I I cannot say much,
Okay.
and it's just that the progression and meta loop and the gameplay is much more important for me now than it was in Space Engineers 1. So I really want to make the game not just to be about building, but also about experiencing the game, progressing somewhere, having some challenges, some goals, and so on, some objectives. So I just want to say that it's important.
Okay, great. In Software House also branches into good AI. And how is the AI that you're developing helping with the new game? Is it going to be implemented, or do you have it like separate things?
So in Good AI, we started as a company that wants to develop general AI. And last few years ago, we pivoted and started to work only on two projects. One is ground station for controlling autonomous drones, but that has nothing to do with games. And then there is a game called AI People. And in AI People, we have AI NPCs that are powered by language models like ChatGPT. And so the NPCs, they can think, they have their goals, emotions, some long-term memory. They are interacting in a world and so on. And we are developing this game. There is roughly 20 developers working on it. And how or what synergy does it have with Space Engineers 2? Is that like none currently? But I think that when we will start implementing the NPCs, it's very possible that we will use the technology from Good AI or from AI People. So that I don't want to promise it now or anything like that. But if we start working on NPCs in a year, then it's possible that it will be already mature technology and we can use it for Space Engineers too. So in principle, it would mean that you would be able to speak to those NPCs. They would make decisions not based on some script, but based on like emulating that personality. So if you insult somebody, he will probably not help you anymore. Or if you betray somebody, again, he will not help you probably. Maybe he will want some revenge and so on.
Okay, best of luck with that because it would be amazing and it would really change the way one plays a game, right? What is the most excited thing that you want the gamers to try?
So when I'm speaking about the vertical slice one that we'll be releasing in January, then it's the unified grid system and what they will build with it. Like that's what I'm really looking forward to because until now it was only Miko, our level designer, and maybe few people, like building some little thing here and there, but probably nobody had time to, like really spend days building something amazing. So I'm really looking forward to like more people building with unified grid system because as I said, now it was just one person, like that actually built all the ships and everything that you have seen in the trailers. And when we will see thousands of people building, I think that will be interesting. And so it will also inspire us in, what the game needs, what we can build, and maybe also what can be in the story, like what kind of ships. So I am really looking forward to this.
Okay, great. And yeah, one more question. Because I was forgetting about this one. On Space Engineers one, I loved to build bases on the moon and on asteroids, and always had the issue that was not airtight. The terrain was not airtight, and had to like mask with glasses behind the rocks. But is it going to be airtight for the sequel, or is it something related to voxels and it cannot be done?
Uh, I will look into this. I need to speak with my team about this. And we'll see. Because I think we should solve it, and I think the voxels should be airtight because it kind of doesn't make sense to me. And yeah, I think we will have to try because we also have this quality standard or quality bar on space engineers too that like simply we cannot not do some things or some things cannot have like lower quality than what is this bar saying, and this sounds like one of those things.
Okay, great, and thank you. At least from myself, thank you. So yes, that is going to be all. I don't want to take any more of your time, Marek. It was an amazing experience. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Anything else that you want to add before we go?
That's good. Thank you again for inviting me.
No, please. It was a pleasure. Thank you so much.